Hi, I'm John Atack,
I'm Sam Atack.
and this is our roundup of 2019. Quick roundup, we've got a longer one. So, what was the first thing on the list?
What? Dan's guitar.
Dan's guitar.
Yeah.
Dan's been playing the guitar now for 2 years, and he can already do
Van Halen,
Jimi Hendrix, Peter Green, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Terry Kath.
Terry
of course,
Kath.
the great Terry Kath. Very pleased with that. Sam, you've been picking up the bass and the guitar and returning to keyboards, which is something you've played since you were knee-high to a knee-high thing.
Knee-high to a...
And doing lots of what I'm going to call paper sculpture, because I think calling it origami is now, I think, beyond that, which will also be featuring on the YouTube channel. Lizzie, my daughter, has been doing some incredible embroidery and knitting this year, really detailed craft stuff. Her daughter, my granddaughter, your niece, Amelie, will be 7, 2 days before Christmas, and is fantastic and wonderful, and we love her. She's been having home education. She's just had a glowing appraisal for having done 17 books since she was last seen. Doing very well.
My older brother Ben's picked up a PhD in environmental studies.
He hasn't quite picked it up yet. He started it.
Isn't that the same thing?
I think you have to do it before you pick it up.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And he's still running Positive Homes, which builds very low energy houses. His wife Artie has got a job she actually likes, doing sort of research, medical sort of stuff. They're both off in India at the moment, actually, enjoying the smog of Delhi.
And ignoring Christmas.
Yeah, as you can. And so the highlight of March was...
It's the trip to Spain.
And who did we go with?
Our friend Yuval Laor.
Our friend Yuval Laor, who was awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And highlights of that, you've got 2 minutes.
Oh, my favourite was the Prado in Madrid. We went first, and seeing the Velasquez, the Goya, and Bosch.
Yeah.
But,
and so much else, Titian and Rubens, and just fabulous.
So at least 40 Goyas there. It's great.
Yeah, really, really wonderful. We also in Madrid saw the Reina Sofia, the Queen Sofia Museum, which is a modern museum, and that had in it...
I've forgotten its name.
Guernica,
yeah.
Not huge Picasso fan, but wow.
Yeah.
We went from there to Cordoba. What was great in Cordoba?
It's the Grand Mosque.
Which just goes on forever. It has a cathedral in the middle of it, which should spoil it and doesn't.
And those wonderful arches.
It's just, it's
it's
a really chilled out space.
Yeah,
it's nice and cool, because they knew how to build cool buildings in hot places. But there's just a really, it's one of those kind of top 10 places ever.
Yeah.
We went to Seville, to the Alcazar Palace, which is
very nice.
An Islamic palace built by a Christian king, because he didn't
realise they were better at it.
Yes. And then to Granada, where we saw the mausoleum of Ferdinand and Isabella. Sadly, we couldn't get tickets to Alhambra. I've been before. So we'll have to go back, because that's brilliant too. And in the mausoleum of Ferdinand and Isabella, you go down and you see the little coffins in which they now live.
Nice. And the little baby coffin.
Which is sad.
Misplaced.
And a Roger van der Weyden deposition from the cross, which was fantastic. I, for the last 10 years or so, have actually grown 10 or a dozen varieties of tomato every year, and I grow 30 or 40 plants, and we eat a lot of tomatoes, which is very good for you, and they're full of umami flavour. And this came about because I grew a black Russian and found that there was a tomato that tasted really fruity and wonderful, not like anything store-bought. And then the next year found the Cherokee chocolate. And tomatoes come true to the mother of the plant, so you can keep picking the seeds and pretty much have the variety. But this year, when we planted last year's Cherokee, year before it was Cherokee chocolate seeds, we produced a hybrid, which rather than being a brown tomato is red, is smaller, it doesn't have the sort of bizarre surface, the scabbing of the Cherokee tomato, which is absolutely standard.
And there are a load of them.
Yeah, it cropped twice.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that we now have a new hybrid, but we're just going to grow those next year. We'll tell you next year. I worked on a couple of papers with Steve Hassan, chapters. The first for a book on lone terrorism from the perspective of people who've studied authoritarian groups, so-called cults. We worked with Mansi Shah and Simran Malhotra, and that will be coming out in Oxford University Press book next year. Also worked with him on a chapter about anti-Semitism, and so for a book published by Springer on anti-Semitism and psychiatry. That led me into some pretty deep work on the internet and how the internet is basically allowing people to develop their ideas and without having a leader go and do horrible things. So we'll be doing a lot of thinking next year about how we might make that a bit better. Who knows? I went to ICSA in Manchester in July and managed to give an almost 2-hour talk. How does he do it? With Professor Eileen Barker in the audience, which was interesting, as we've been slightly on different sides. So I was very pleased that she came to see me. Very gratified. Then a friend, Steve Hassan, published a book called The Cult of Trump.
Yeah.
And was his title and the preliminary publicity material was critiqued by Professor Benjamin Zeller, and I wrote a response to that, and that's gone up on Janja Lelich's site. Janja was great. Alan Shefflin was really helpful. I get a real sense of community from the suggestions that were made. That's a piece about. He criticises the word brainwashing, which Steve doesn't use. He criticises, he talks about charisma, which is worth talking about, but it's not an aspect of Steve's book. And he has a go at the word cult. And so we did a piece called Cult on New Religious Movement, which is just an extract from my response to that. We've sort of, I think the great thing this year has been this, sitting about rabbiting on. And,
I really enjoyed it.
It's fantastic that people actually want to look at this. Thank you so much. But it's been more enjoyable. Usually I'm writing things and that you do become quite isolated. So having a pet 17-year-old to interrupt me, make rude comments, and pull faces. Pulls great faces. So we've expanded the channel, but we started talking about social science, I suppose, psychological education or something like that.
And now we've moved into art and things like that, and your books, which Voodoo Child's not been on the channel yet.
We've got a piece coming up about my novel Voodoo Child. We put a piece up about my translation of the Tao Te Ching. It was just, Sam and Dan and my daughter Lizzie have pushed me for years to say, well, but you do all of these other things. So suddenly we got the chance to do them, and hopefully people like them. In 2020, there are 2 new novels, which are drafted and ready to go. I think, did Halcyon Days come out last year or the year before? I don't remember. I've got 2 novels out there. I'm playing the drums again, and after a couple of years with that, which is the first time in 45 years that I haven't played. And we have everything set up so we can actually record some music and share that with you. I'm going to read some poetry, but that's where the boys have been pushing me for the last 3 or 4 years to dip into the 3,000 poems of horrible, terrible things. We also have I'm going to talk some more about recovery, because I've found that people are very interested in that, and I do have a perspective on recovery from authoritarian groups and relationships, which seems still to be unusual. Anybody who's having a problem with that, read Janja Lelich, Madeline Tobias, Take Back Your Life. That's a very good starting point. There'll be a new edition of my book, Opening Minds, sometime in the new year. And I'm going to do a painting demonstration. I'm going to show how I do these things, because it's not quite just splashing the paint on. You do actually have to have a system. And it's the same system that Rembrandt used. So there may be painters who are interested in that, or hobbyists who are interested in it. Rex Basterfield brought the camera and sews together the sound and the light, and we are infinitely grateful. Spike spends hours and hours and hours making sure that if we mention somebody,
there's a photo in there.
They take a little picture of them, and we go, "God, is that what he looked like?" Books and stuff like that, illustrations, fantastic, just wonderful. We could not do this without Rex and Spike. And we also couldn't do it without my brother Jim and his wife Janet, who pretty much put up most of the backing to allow us to do this. So thank you very much, brother Jamie and sister Janet. And we hope to see a lot more of you in 2020, as much of you as possible. And thank you very much for your kind attention. And have a fantastic 2020, the best year ever. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
I'm John Atack.
I'm Tommy Atack.